watching the game. I'm your host, Idrees, joined today by Yunis as the first week of the NFL playoffs have concluded. We are done with the wild card round, or the super wild card weekend, and on to the divisional round. Let's just go through each one of these games one by one, starting with the first one. The Bills beat the Colts 27-24 in one of the better games of the weekend. I had picked the Colts. They had a chance at the end, but they just couldn't finish their drive off. They end up losing. Josh Allen had a very good game.
Yeah, definitely. I expected the Bills to win this one, especially because of a huge game by Josh Allen. And I think the only thing stopping Buffalo from a Super Bowl run is their defense. I mean, you can't let Indianapolis make a comeback like that. And I don't know if I can have faith in their defense.
Yeah, I mean, they should have done much better. And the Colts are a pretty good team. They were 11-5. I picked them for a reason. I thought, the experience they would have would help them out. It wasn't looking good when it was 24-10, like a few minutes into the fourth quarter, but the Colts stuck in it. They scored a couple times. They made it close. They got the ball back with 2 minutes. At their own 20, but they weren't going nearly fast enough. They did not go fast enough to try in order to get downfield, score, and then there was that whole review. They weren't ready right out of the review. It was bad clock management by Rivers and Reich at the end.
Yeah, and I see your point. I mean, they do have veterans on that team with probably some of them with playoff experiences. But in the end, as you said, it was down to Indianapolis's last drive, and they weren't able to execute.
Philip Rivers, I wonder. I would be surprised if this was his last game. Obviously, he's not that good anymore, but he had a pretty good game, and I could totally see him coming back to the Colts if they can't get, like, Matthew Stafford or something. Obviously, Stafford is, like, the slam dunk for them. They have a good team. They have cap space. I mean, the Colts might be the best position team in the offseason. If, like, for example, if Dak were to somehow leave, even though he won't, but, like, if somehow he were to leave, they have like 60 plus million in cap space, even though they're already a contender. And really, they could just put all the money to keeping Houston, Hilton, and getting a QB.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rivers still has a year left in him. I mean, for him, it was a pretty good season. We weren't expecting too much, since he's aged a bit. I mean, if they move on or if he retires, I mean, they'd probably go after some free agent signees, maybe even draft a quarterback.
I don't know. I don't know if they would be able to get any of the top QBs, so they'd probably have to go for a veteran. Their pick is gonna
be Patrick, maybe.
I think their pick is 21. I think they have the 21st pick, so I wouldn't think so. Fitzpatrick, maybe.
I mean, they had Brissett. They had him in the system for the past 3 years. I mean, will he?
Brissett's probably gonna leave. Honestly, I would be surprised if Brissett were to come back. But yeah, the Colts will be back next year. I think they'll win. As a matter of fact, I think they should be the favorites right now to win the division next year. And then just, there's especially if they get Stafford, you could definitely see a lot of people picking them to possibly make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, definitely. They're shot on all three phases of the ball if they get Stafford.
And then last thing about the Bills, they look really, really good. So it's like, I mean, I want to say the defense, like you said, is a struggle. They can't really run the ball very well. So we'll have to see if, the Colts have a decent secondary, but we'll have to see if a team with a better secondary stops them.
Like
And
Baltimore.
Baltimore will be that test. Alright, moving on to the next game. The Rams beat the Seahawks 30-20. Rams defense absolutely made life hell for Russell Wilson. They were all over him all game. The Seahawks offensive line couldn't block anyone. And, Wilson turned the ball over, got sacked 5 times, threw a pick 6. Only scored 20 points, including 7, which were basically in garbage time. So, I'm kind of disappointed
Even with
in
Aaron
Seattle.
Donald.
I thought Seattle would make the Super Bowl. I mean, I was thinking their offense and defense would finally put it together because we saw one half of the year the offense was unstoppable. One half of the year their defense, nobody could do anything on them. So I was thinking they'll put it together during the postseason. But the defense played
the
well.
whole year long.
The defense
The whole year long.
The defense played okay. Should have played better. I mean, considering Goff was playing with a broken thumb.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but as I was saying, the entire year long, their Achilles heel was their offensive line. After they got their defense fixed, their offensive line was still absolutely trash, and that's what eventually cost them.
Yeah, Seattle, in terms of their offseason, the number one thing to first of all, they should have fired their offensive coordinator, but apparently they're not going to. So that's already not a good start. Obviously, we don't know exactly how much the salary cap is going to be. I think they were saying anywhere between 175 to 195 million. I think it's going to be the higher part of that, just because that would be screwing over a lot of teams and players if it wasn't the higher part. So they would have 35 million in cap space, but few key free agents: KJ Wright, Quinton Dunbar, Benson Mayowa, Mike Upati. It would be. I have to see what they do. They're going to have to hit on their draft picks this year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Seattle definitely needs rebuild of that offensive line.
Dwayne Brown and Damian Lewis are good. And then I guess maybe Brandon Shell might be okay for right tackle. But then you have to find a new left guard. You have to find a new center. Oh my god, their center got flagged 5 times during the game. He was atrocious.
Yeah. And an outstanding part on the Rams defense, even when Aaron Donald got injured, that didn't faze them. They're still the great defense that we see.
Leonard Floyd he's not playing way better than he was in Chicago, but he's just getting more sacks. Pressure, he's applying the same pressure. He's always a good player, just never great. Right now he's playing a little better than, what he would play.
And on the offensive side of the ball, for the Rams, Wolford got injured in the first half, left the game with a neck injury, and then Goff comes in. 12 days after having surgery on his broken thumb. But it really wasn't about Goff and his comeback. It was about Cam Akers and how he just ran for over 130 yards with a touchdown as well.
It's weird that Cam Akers didn't get really involved until I don't even remember, but he didn't get really involved until later in the season, which seems crazy to me. He should have always been ahead of Malcolm Brown, and then he should have been always splitting carries with Darrell Henderson. Now that it's working, it's like, okay, they're fine. But that defense is just so good, and a lot of these guys have just taken big steps up. It's like every team that needs a defensive coordinator should be trying to hire Vic Fangio's assistants, Brandon Staley's assistants, because those cover two guys seem to be the next new wave, just like how the McVay guys were the new wave a couple years ago.
Yeah, I see your point, and also a major part of that is, I mean, when you have a great leader and player in Aaron Donald, I mean, it just makes your whole team better, especially the defensive side of the ball.
See, Aaron Donald is just like a couple years ago it was debatable with like a few players like Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald, those guys are the two best. Right now it's not that Khalil Mack has played worse, but right now it's clearly like Aaron Donald is number one there's like a decent gap there. So I respect the Rams for that. So they're going to be playing the Green Bay Packers next week.
Which may be a concern since they've never played in the cold.
Maybe, but also we saw the Packers' worst game of the year came when a team got so much pressure on them in Tampa Bay. And that's exactly what the Rams specialize at. And without Bakhtiari, too, I could honestly see an upset here.
I mean, yeah, I think Green Bay has to definitely take that into consideration. I mean, their poor miscues against Tampa Bay. As you said, I mean, the Rams are amazing at putting pressure on the quarterbacks, and we'll see who wins the duel between Aaron Donald and Aaron Rodgers.
All right. Last game of Saturday was Tampa Bay at Washington, in which, nobody was really surprised that Tampa Bay won 31-23, yeah, what? 1 second.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, Washington did put up their fight with a third-string quarterback and Taylor Heinicke. I mean, he played a great game for one in his position. Threw for 300 yards and a touchdown, and that great diving touchdown run by Heinicke. But again, I mean, Tampa Bay.
He was airing the ball out. I mean, he looks like. I know it's one game, so obviously not to read too much into it, but if Washington can't get a good veteran QB or a rookie QB next year, he should definitely be competing for the starting job. At least the backup. At least their top backup.
I mean, I think they have to, decide on their quarterback and then probably fix up that offensive line and maybe add some new receivers alongside McLaurin.
I mean, they need a few receivers probably, but yeah, QB, receiver, maybe another corner is what they really need. So we'll see about that.
And for Tampa Bay, some may say, I mean, this was Brady's game that he needed to get, the dice rolling, and then some see them going Super Bowl bound. Do you see that happen?
Tampa, I mean, I think the Saints have their number, and I think the Saints would beat them again. It's like, I think, sure, if they start putting it together right now, they could possibly, but I also think that hmm, I don't know what I'm saying, but I think I would take Seattle in order New Orleans to beat them again, just because they seem to match up really well with them. They'll shut down their running game completely, force Brady to throw a lot, and then they have a good pass rush, which will fluster him. I mean, they beat them 38-3 on the road earlier in the year.
Yeah, but I mean, Tom losing three straight to New Orleans. I mean, I don't really think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a revenge game for Brady. He's going to throw for over 300 yards like he did against Washington. Then he'll lead the Buccaneers to, I mean, some would say an upset over New Orleans.
Mm. I mean, you would think Tampa would do better. Also, the defense might be a little concerning. I mean, they were without Devin White. They still let Taylor Heineke. What's it called?
They get Devin White back this week.
I think so, yeah. So that'll help a lot defensively. I mean, the Saints we'll get to in a second, but I wouldn't think that's the issue. I could definitely see like a lower scoring game, possibly. Like considering compared to the first two games, I could definitely see a lower scoring game. And then but yeah, in terms of Washington, they should also be looking for a veteran QB. If Stafford is available, they should be trying to get him. I mean,
yeah, they definitely need a leader on the offensive side alongside McLaurin. And I mean, I think if they get their quarterback, if they get that piece, and then they kind of fix up the offensive line, I mean, we might see a competitor next year in the FC East between Dallas when Dak comes back and he's healthy.
I would still say Washington is a favorite. I mean, they have plenty of cap space. You know, the only key free agents, Brandon Scherf, they should be able to re-sign him easily. Ryan Kerrigan, they don't even have to keep because they have a bunch of young guys up front. I guess Heineke as a backup, Kyle Allen as a backup, but you bring all these guys back, and then what you really need, like we said, if they can trade for Stafford, oh my God, this team will be scary. Also, just like the Colts, trade for Stafford, pick a wide receiver round 1. Watch out. Alright, moving on to the Sunday games. First game, the Ravens beat the Titans 20-13. I guess third time's the charm. They get revenge on the Titans for this season and last season. Lamar Jackson didn't do a lot throwing the ball. He did a decent amount, but his main thing, he had over 100 rushing yards, including a 40-yard amazing touchdown run and another 20-plus yard run to help seal the game away. So, I mean Lamar Jackson,
the highlight of that
the doubters wrong.
Lamar, he put his team on his back and basically advanced them to the divisional round. But another point to that is Derrick Henry. I mean, he was absolutely shut down by the Ravens defense. I mean, the man only carried it for 40 yards. That forced Tannehill to do most of the work, which they were able to prevent. And is it really about the offense or the defense? What do you think?
I mean, Titans' scheme has always been the same with running the ball. Their O-line isn't amazing. It's just fine. But Derrick Henry is the guy. So I would give more credit to the Ravens. They worked. They were like, we're going to shut down Derrick Henry. And that's exactly what they did. But I mean, the real problem here is what the hell was Mike Vrabel doing at the end of the game, punting the ball when they were down 17-13, punting the ball at the 40 on 4th and 2. That just cost him the game completely.
That was a very questionable decision by Vrabel.
You know, I just how do you decide? Oh, I get it. Derrick Henry was being shut down. He was, but like, man, if you want to win in the playoffs, you have like if you want to win in the playoffs, you have to be going for that there. You have no choice but to go for it.
I mean, for the Titans, the question, I mean, all year was obviously Derrick Henry was outstanding, but I mean, if Henry was somehow stopped by a great defense, an example, the Ravens, what would be your plan B? I mean, does Tannehill have ability to make a comeback and lead this team to a victory? And he was decent all year long, had 40 touchdowns, but I mean, it didn't end up happening yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens offensively, like I said, Lamar 100 plus rushing yards, and he knew exact. I mean, one thing that was bad though was I think he got sacked 4 or 5 times by a Titans team who had 20 sacks during the entire season. That's definitely something they have to work on going against Buffalo because there's no reason for Lamar Jackson to be taking that many sacks. And part of it was Lamar, part of it was they kind of struggled on the interior blocking. But I mean, Buffalo, like we said, their defense kind of has been struggling. But I would still be a little scared of their pass rush if the defense is going to play like that again. If the offensive line is going to play like that again. Tennessee, I don't really know what they're going to do this offseason. They're mostly locked up. They've locked up most of their starters, their key players. Clowney's going to be a free agent, but he wasn't playing that well this year. Corey Davis is a free agent. Jonnu Smith is a free agent. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I think most of their building over the offseason is going to be on the defensive side of the ball.
They have to.
Maybe a draft pick here and there.
I mean, everything they do, pick defense, pick defense, pick defense. Allocate your resources there.
And then a key play in the fourth quarter during that game was Marcus Peters' game-sealing interception, and then they just stomped over the Titans' defense. Very disrespectful the way the Titans did in Week 11 when they played in Baltimore.
I mean, Baltimore should be. I think Baltimore should be able to win next week. I would take Lamar. I know Josh Allen has better weapons, but I think Lamar can outduel him in a close game. And I think the Ravens defense will be able to shut down the Bills defense, the Bills offense just enough.
Definitely going to be interesting.
Definitely going to be what?
It's going to be interesting to see how the Ravens defense tries to stop Josh Allen and tries to stop his arm in throwing the ball. That's their whole offense.
All right. Moving on to the fifth game. The Bears lost the Saints 21-9, ending their season at 8-9. and they will be going home.
Sadly.
So, I mean, you know, not not really shocking. Probably, basically, there were problems all around offensively. Matt Nagy and Bill Lazor called a pretty conservative game plan for some reason. Um, Part of it is inability to trust Mitchell Trubisky. Part of it is I'm not. Part of it is they're not amazing at scheming up those deep shots. Even though they have schemed up a few that are really good. Probably just not enough. I mean, that trick play when Javon Wims dropped the pass was a killer. Ugh.
Yeah, that would have shifted
Surefire
momentum
touchdown.
and put us on the board and tied the game. But fortunate that Javon couldn't end up with it.
It's too bad because if Darnell Mooney is there, he's catching that easily. That's a touchdown.
Yeah, I think injuries helped us this game.
But I think this game just goes to show, like, Trubisky is not going to be back next year. I mean, I there's been this whole argument basically over whose fault it is. It's Trubisky's fault or it's Nagy's fault, and I'm just over here saying I would what's it called? I would say that the main problem is not Matt Nagy or Bill Lazor. The main problem is Trubisky, and just that I'm afraid can't really trust him to do enough to win you games. And when that happens, you're just asking. You just can't do that much. Even McVay and Kyle Shanahan, at least like Goff and Garoppolo, they can do more than Trubisky in terms of reading the field.
I think that's for sure definitely the number one thing Trubisky has to improve on if the Bears want to re-sign him as a backup. But I mean, I agree with you. I don't think the Bears should move on from Nagy. I think Trubisky is the main issue.
Yeah, I'm very I think also Matt Nagy still has to make some adjustments. Like he has to be more aggressive next year. I'm really hoping it's more of a thing with the scheme and not exactly that. What was I saying is that so he has to when he wants to call those third down plays, right? He needs to have more plays where the guys are running beyond the sticks. I don't think it's as big of an issue as people think, but too often, yeah, there aren't enough routes beyond the sticks. On the
He always tries a short pass about 3 or 4 yards on the field and
but
trusts his player to get extra 3 yards.
I think more often it's the maybe he asks for too much yak, but more often I think it's Trubisky checks down too much, and then he misses the further throws. I mean, the very first third down of the game, he had Montgomery wide open out of the backfield. Wide open out of the backfield, and he missed him. He double pumped and threw it into coverage. And then another third down later in the game, he had DeAndre Carter wide open, and he just completely missed the throw. So I don't know, man. I just think I don't know what the Bears' options at QB are gonna be like. I mean, there's Jacoby Brissett. You could just start Nick Foles. You could try Jameis Winston.
Try Cam Newton.
Andy Dalton is out there, but none of them are exciting options. You would need unless somehow one of them broke out, it would probably be another year of But if it would probably be another year of okay, defense good, offense bad. But if that QB they get, if they can just get a QB, middle of the pack QB, it might be enough. Yeah, mama. Like maybe if Jameis Winston throws half the picks he did a couple years ago, or Jacoby Brissett can throw downfield a little more.
Or we somehow get Deshaun Watson in a trade
Okay,
with the
now
Texans.
we're doing realistic stuff. Just realistic stuff. So, I mean, Saints, I think everyone expected them to win. Not really surprising. They'll go on to play the Buccaneers, like we said, and I think they'll win there. But I would say that I expected them to look better. They definitely didn't look like they really showed they're a top team this week. I mean, the Bears hung with them for a lot of that game.
Yeah, most of the first half, I mean, New Orleans were winning the whole time. It was a 7-3 score. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, you're thinking to yourself, I mean, this is the Bears. I mean, the Saints should be winning by more. Which questioned all of us about their power offensively. But they eventually pulled away by Alvin Kamara and Deontay Harris.
Anyway, but last thing on the Bears, I would say the defense's performance yesterday kind of gave me more hope for next year. I know they were struggling a little towards the end of the year, but that gave me more hope with a couple of younger players coming in. I would say they can still be a top 10 unit next year. Like Kendall Vildor, Duke Shelley, those two played pretty well. Sean Gibson had a really good game. They should look to re-sign him. They're not going to have a ton of cap space. And they have to re-sign Allen Robinson. Not a ton of cap space. They should look to trade down in the draft. But it'll be an interesting offseason for sure. Especially because it's like, I don't know. Maybe they could do like what the Vikings did this year, but if they decide if they decide to basically go into next year with the same roster, they have to make the playoffs and actually do something, or else they're gonna get fired.
Yeah, whoever they fire, their GM or their head coach, or even if they keep Trubisky or get rid of him, I mean, it'll be interesting what the Bears come up with.
Right. And then the last game, of the wild card weekend, the Browns came into Pittsburgh and shocked the Steelers. They beat them, what was it,
48-37.
48-37. The game started the same way as the Broncos-Seahawks Super Bowl. Immediately a bad snap, but a touchdown instead of a safety for the Browns. And the next thing you know, you had
Interception by Ben Roethlisberger.
Roethlisberger threw a pick, and then he threw another pick, and by the end of the game, he had thrown 4 picks. It was bad. And then the Browns just were better than them in all phases of the game. They went out 28-0 right away in the first quarter. And then they were just playing prevent the rest of the game. I mean, the Browns didn't have Stefanski, didn't have Bitonio, didn't have Denzel Ward. And they still beat the Saints by a decent margin I don't think anyone really saw this coming.
Yeah, nobody really saw this coming. I mean, the real question is this the Browns' strength or is this the Steelers' weakness? I mean, everyone knew Pittsburgh. I mean, despite their record through the first half of the season, they were undefeated, but I mean, really it came down to the last stretch of the season. They started losing a couple games and then they even though they still ended up winning the division, I mean, I feel like we all knew Pittsburgh wasn't really that team at the end of the year.
Mm. I mean, Steelers. I mean, they started 11-0, ended the year 1-5, first round exit. It's not pretty at all. I don't think they need to tear everything down, but it's going to be a tough offseason. They already barely have any cap space. And obviously, Roethlisberger, it's a big question mark whether he wants to come back, whether he's good enough to come back. And then, I mean, they have to re-sign Bud Dupree's a free agent, Villanueva's a free agent, Mike Hilton's a free agent, Juju Smith-Schuster's a free agent.
I
James
think I
Conner's
see
free
like
agent.
3 out of the 4 coming back.
Like, they still have a good team, without a doubt. Like, they still have a very good team. They're going to have
Yeah.
to let some guys go. So they're not going to be the division winners next year. You know? And Marquise
I mean, just
Pouncey is retiring, I think, too. So,
oh wow, that's a big loss for them. I mean, for the Browns, I mean, next week you play Kansas City. Offensively, I mean, what can you do to break that Kansas City defense? I mean, do you run the ball with Chubb or do you trust Baker make plays down the field? And I think answer is going to be through Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But I mean, defensively, I mean, you're playing Mahomes. What their scheme is going to be on defense, I don't know.
1 second!
They need to make up a plan to stop Patrick Mahomes.
It'll be tough. This is gonna be a high scoring game. They need to match up with them offensively because they're not gonna be able to stop them on the other side of the ball. So I could see a scoreline similar to what we saw in the Browns-Steelers game. Should be high scoring. I don't think the Chiefs should be 10-point favorites, but I do think the Chiefs will win. I would be really surprised if the Browns actually won.
Yeah, that would be a huge upset for the Browns, for the Chiefs, if they lose to the Browns. But I see Kansas City have this in the bag.
I just wonder, the only thing I can think of is maybe being off for the 2+ weeks. Maybe they're kind of rusty. They shouldn't be. At the same time, the Browns need to get a lot of pressure on them because the linebackers, their secondary really isn't good.
I mean, if Cleveland's gonna win, they need Myles Garrett and that defensive front to have a great game, beat the Kansas City offensive line. In the past game, even in the run game, I mean, Mahomes has it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire should be back, so he's another weapon. I mean, Kansas City's just all firepower on offense.
Yeah, I would pick the Chiefs to win, like I said, but don't rule out the Browns. That's all I would say. Alright, that concludes our episode for today. We'll be back with you later in the week. And don't forget tonight, College Football National Championship. Ohio State will win.
Ohio State. Watch out, Justin Fields.
Justin Fields gonna prove himself to be the number 2 pick. See y'all.